Thank you for that warm welcome. I am here to share 3 words with you today. Probably can't guess what they are. Those 3 words are very important to me personally and to my family. Those 3 words have led to 2 people doing something that no one thought they could do. Those 3 words have made it possible for one man to overcome challenges that people thought just could not be overcome. These words can also tell the story of how a family of 5 actually worked to change the world in terms of how they look at people with disabilities. And I do believe if you think of a challenge that you have personally, these 3 words can help each and every person here become empowered. And those words are, yes, you can. My brother Rick and our father have completed in over 1,100 racing events. These do include marathons, duathlons, triathlons, 6 of which were of the Ironman distance. Also adding to their list of achievements, Dad and Rick biked and ran across the United States in 1992, completing 3,735 miles in 45 consecutive days. When competing in all of these events, they became known as Team Hoyt, a father and son team that have inspired others to run when they didn't think that they could. In 2009, the Boston Marathon aligned perfectly, and it was actually their 1,000th race together. Rick has always said that the Boston Marathon is his favorite race, and he believes that the Boston Marathon defines Boston the same way the Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics, and Patriots do. In the spring of 1977, Rick asked our father if he could run a 5-mile benefit race for a lacrosse player who'd been paralyzed in an accident. Rick at the time had a computer where he had to click each letter to spell out. So Rick got on his computer and he started to type slowly, D-A-D space, C-A-N space. This was the pace at which he typed. And he finished that message, "Can I run the race?" And our father said, "Yes, you can." Now, at the time, my father was no long-distance runner. He ran maybe 2 miles a week just to be able to keep his weight down because he was in the military and he had to meet certain requirements. But he found the strength needed, and they finished all 5 miles of that first race, coming in not last, but next to last. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead here. When Rick got home, he got on his computer. Our mom, Judy, okay, why are we jumping here? Here we go. My mom, Judy, hooked Rick up to his computer, and Rick typed out, "Dad, when I'm running, it feels like my disability disappears." So 1977, which was 48 years ago, the journey to what became over 1,100 races started with that 5-mile race. And when Rick told our dad, "It feels like my disability disappears," Dad was hooked. He loved having the ability to give his son the same chance to be included as everyone else. So of course, Rick had an idea. "Hey Dad, can we run more races?" And Dad had to say, "Yes, you can." So they had a wheelchair built that was designed for running. And they started out with 5K races, just over 3 miles, 10K races, just over 6 miles. They had even run a 10-mile race, and Rick got another idea. "Hey, Dad, can I run the Boston Marathon?" Dad said, "Yes, you can." Rick loved the crowds along the marathon route, and Boston became his absolute favorite race. After running Boston a few times, they got to know Dave McGilvery, the race director of the Boston Marathon, quite well. And at the time, Dave was putting on a triathlon series. And he said, "Hey, Dick, I think you would be a great triathlete." Of course, my father said, "Okay, how can Rick and I do that?" And Dave went, "How? I have no idea." But they talked about it, and Rick got excited. So, of course, Rick went home, and guess what Rick did? "Dad, can I complete a triathlon?" Dad had no choice. He was hooked. He was in. He said, "Yes, you can." I want to show you the triathlon that they did. This is a little bit of a video about the one and only Ironman Championship Triathlon in Hawaii.
Registration for the 25th Ironman continues one by one. Some faces we recognize. Here is 58-year-old Richard Holder, number 214, back for a second try. He's legally blind and it doesn't matter to him. No, the thing that must occur at all costs is this time, cross the line.
It's more than a race. It's a lifetime event that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. You're either going to carry me off the course, or I'm going to cross the finish line.
The stories about people like Richard Holcomb pass through this world as race week moves forward this morning. Hey, did you hear about the man who is legally blind? People love to tell and love to hear the stories. Then, appearing near the start line, where they've been before, are father and son, Dick and Ricky Hoyle. There is no one here who hasn't heard about them, their story, and a human commitment that goes far beyond and far back.
January 10th, 1962. We knew there was something wrong, but we did not know exactly what. The doctor said, forget Rick. Put him away, put him in an institution. He's going to be nothing but a vegetable for the rest of his life. We cried a little bit. We talked, and we said, no, we're not going to put Rick away. We're going to bring Rick home and bring him up like any other child. We knew Rick was smart. We could tell by looking in his eyes. And when we talked to him, he was paying attention to what we were saying. So we wanted to get a computer built so Rick could communicate with us. Everybody came to our house that night for Rick to say his first words, and everybody was betting, what is the first words Rick is ever going to say? His mom saying it's going to be hi, Mom. Me, the dad saying, no, it's going to be hi, Dad. Well, the Boston Bruins were going for the Stanley Cup, and the very first words Rick ever said was go Bruins.
Dick's a military man, so he knows a thing or two about commitment. This time, he's just months removed from a heart attack. This gift that he gives to his son, or is it the other way around? Either way, it all started when Rick heard about a charity run for a paralyzed athlete. He asked Dad, and Dad said yes.
The guy went off, and we went off with all the other runners, and everybody thought that Rick and I would just go to the corner and turn around and come back. Well, we didn't. We finished the whole 5 miles, coming in next to last, but not last. And when we got home that night, Rick wrote on his computer, Dad, when I'm running, it feels like my disability disappears. So that was a very powerful message to me, that we finally found a sport that Rick could get involved in just like everybody else. Rick is my motivator. He inspires me. To me, he's the one out there competing, and I'm just throwing him my arms and my legs so that he can compete. There's just something that gets into me when I'm out there competing with Rick that I can't explain it, and we're able to go faster. And it's just an unbelievable feeling. Rick and I love the Ironman triathlon. To be out there competing with the best triathletes in the world, to be accepted to compete along with these triathletes. Just to be out there on that pier with all the other triathletes and then waiting in the water for that cannon to go off, it was just so exciting. The feeling coming down the finish line and leading driver, it's just an awesome experience. With the crowd there, all the excitement, the noise, and the announcers announcing, all the adrenaline just gets flowing.
I may be disabled, but I live a very fulfilling life. And if someone takes the time to get to know me, they will realize that I am no different than anyone else.
Here he is, he graduated from public high school. He's graduated from college. He's out there competing in road races and triathlons. He he lives a happier life probably than 95% of the population. Rick would tell you that, if he was physically able to do something, that he'd probably play basketball or football or hockey. But then he always says, no, the first thing he'd do is sit down, have me sit down in his wheelchair and push me. But he was actually so good that he appreciates, what I'm trying to do to help him out, and he'd do the same thing for me. Our message is yes, you can. You can do anything you want to do as long as you make up your mind. You can do it.
If you have ever searched for the meaning of life, stop. The answer lies right here. By the way, Ricky would want us to tell you the Bruins look pretty good this year.
So that video was made a little while ago. The Bruins looked good a few years back. In addition to Hawaii, the journey that Team Hoyt has traveled has taken this father and son team to Canada to complete the Canadian Ironman triathlon. By the way, every Ironman triathlon is 2.4 miles of swimming, 112 miles on the bike, and a full marathon, or 26.2 miles, all done in one day, one event. They also went to Japan to complete a half Ironman, so the distances there are 1.2 miles, 50 swimming, 56 miles biking, and a 13.1 mile run. They went to Germany and completed a full Ironman, and they went to El Salvador to run a marathon as well. Oop. So, oops, sorry. One of the things that happened in all of those countries, El Salvador, Canada, Germany, and Japan, is that there were not people with disabilities that were seen competing in events, completing high-level athletic events. So what was happening is Rick, with the support of his family, was actually going to places around the world and changing how people looked at, saw, and treated people with disabilities. So really and truly, a person sitting in a wheelchair who can't talk, can't walk, was changing the world. Both of our parents and Rick have passed on. 2 years ago, Rick's lungs could no longer fight off multiple episodes of pneumonia. 4 years ago, we lost Dad to heart failure, and 13 years before that, we lost Mom with a battle of ovarian cancer. We miss them, but we're here to carry on their message of yes, you can. In fact, most people don't even know this, but my father was not the first person to say, yes, you can. When Dad and Rick were, when Mom and Dad were expecting their first child, there was some difficulty at birth. Rick's umbilical cord got wrapped around his neck. It caused a lack of oxygen, which caused damage to his cerebellum, or the part of his brain that works his muscles. The rest of his brain, the part that worked all of his cognitive functions, the way that he thinks and processes information, was undamaged and was working very well. As Dad said, you could see that he was smart, right? That was my dad's accent. Because of the injury to his cerebellum, this is why Rick could not walk, could not talk, could not dress himself or feed himself. And the doctor said, Dick and Judy, you should forget about Rick, put him in an institution, move on with your lives, have more children. And they, as Dad said, they went out in the hall, they had a conversation, and Dad said to my mother, he said, Judy, can we do this? Can we take a child this disabled home and raise him? And then he lowered his head and he said, what I'm really asking you is, can I do this? And our mother lifted our father's chin, looked him in the eyes, and she was the first person to say, yes, you can. Luckily for our brother Rob, Mom and Dad decided to have more children. However, this is when things really did start to become difficult for Rick. When Rob started to be able to do things like walking and talking and feeding himself, Rick started to notice that Rob was doing things that he couldn't do. I'm also lucky that Dick and Judy decided to not listen to the doctor, or did listen to the doctors about having other children, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. when we were very young, we were always very close, and we remained close throughout our adult lives. Rick, Rob, and I played wiffle ball together, street hockey. We even played jokes on our parents. There was one time, this was Rick's idea, there was one time we actually put one of our mother's dresses on Rick, complete with a wig and makeup, and we pushed Rick to the front door of the house, and we left him there so that when Mom came home from work, she opened the door, and there was Rick dressed up as Mom. Rick really enjoyed it. He thought it was one of the funniest things that we ever did. As a family, we were very active. We used to go mountain climbing together. And my father would take Rick and put him over his shoulder, and we would climb to the top of Mount Monadnock, not too far from here. I do remember this one time in particular. We were climbing the mountain with Dad having Rick over his shoulder, and there was a family coming down the mountain, and they stepped off to the side, and they looked at my father, and they said, "Oh my God, are you guys okay?" And my father, without breaking stride, just sort of turned and goes, "We're going up the mountain." We also enjoyed cross-country skiing. My dad would put Rick in a sled, and we would go down paths. And there was one time where we were actually going down a hill, and the sled started to go a little bit faster than Dad was going. Hit him in the back of the legs. He fell on top of Rick and slid down to the bottom of the hill. And there was another family at the bottom of the hill, and the mom of that family says to my father, "Oh, it's a good thing that your supplies were there to break your fall." Dad in a panic said, "Those aren't supplies, that's my son." And we got over to Rick, we got Dad off of him, we got Rick out, and he was smiling and laughing, and we used our spell method, and Rick said, "Can we do that again?" One of the ways that we were actually able to help start communicating with Rick is that when Rick was about 10 and I was about 4, we actually created what was called the spell method. So we would take the alphabet and break it down by the sections, and I would say, is it after A, after E, after I? And if he said yes at I, then I would say, is it I itself, J, K, L? And then we would know that the first word of the letter was L. And that's actually how we started to allow Rick to be able to communicate on his own. But our parents realized that in order for Rick to truly be successful and seen as independent, he needed his own voice. He needed something that was independent of another person. So they scraped and borrowed and even literally had bake sales to raise enough money to have a communication device built. Rick's very first communication device was called the TIC, or the Tufts Interactive Communicator. It was built by the engineers at Tufts University, and you heard my father tell the story. Everybody was betting. Mom said, it's going to be Hi Mom. Dad said, it's going to be I Love You Dad. I was sure he was going to say Russ is the best. But in 1974, the Boston Bruins were playing for the Stanley Cup, and Rick's first words were, "Go Bruins." Now that Rick could communicate and actually had his own device, he had another question for her mother, and it was, "Hey, can I go to school just like my brothers Rob and Russ?" You know Judy's answer was, "Yes, you can." And she went to the superintendent of schools and she said, "I am not leaving your office until we find a school for my son Rick." The next day, Rick started 5th grade at Fort Meadow Elementary School in Westfield, Massachusetts. Rick worked successfully through school, all the way up through high school, and graduated from Westfield High. He then had another question. "Mom, can I go to college?" Her answer was, "Yes, you can." Rick became the first ever non-walking, non-talking person to ever enter college. Not only did he enter college, but after 9 years of hard work, he graduated from Boston University with his degree in special education. The year was 1993, and Dad and Rick were running the Boston Marathon that year, and what amazed us was all along the route of the Boston Marathon, people were holding up signs that said, "Congratulations, Rick," and they were shouting, "Way to go, Rick, you graduated, you did it." It was just amazing. The entire city had followed his story, knew that he was graduating college, and just made that a celebration. It's one of Rick's absolute favorite memories in his lifetime. And as odd as I am over his accomplishments of the over 1,100 races that he and Dad completed together, the work that he did to graduate college is one of the things that leaves me more in awe of anything that he accomplished in his lifetime. And because of all of these events, they actually got to meet some pretty cool people along the way. I don't know if anybody recognizes this guy here. That's Ben Affleck. And when they got to meet him was at a time when Ben actually presented a very cool award to Dad and Rick, and I would like to share the story of that with you. I just got to shut this off so that we can get to the video.
Present this year's Jimmy V Award for Perseverance. Please welcome two-time Academy Award winner Ben Affleck.
One of the most common questions that people get asked in their lives is a simple one. Where are you from? Well, I've always been extremely proud of my answer. I'm from Boston. This April, the country embraced the city of Boston after an act of terrorism at the Marathon. Terrorism is meant to create fear and to break the spirit of its victims. But the spirit of the city isn't found among our buildings and landmarks. It is found within the people who claim the city as their own and thrive despite adversity. It is found in the people of Boston. And it is especially found in extraordinary people like Rick and Dick Hoyt.
Rick and I have been racing now for 34 years. That's a lot of miles. And especially for these little legs of mine that's still moving. But it has taken a toll on my body.
51 years ago, Dick Hoyt was told that his son Rick, born with a severe form of cerebral palsy, should be institutionalized, that he would never have a normal life. But Dick believed in his son and taught him that together they could overcome anything. And so, despite the fact that Dick had never before competed in a single race, they started running, father pushing son. In 1981, they ran their first marathon in their hometown of Boston. They would forever after feel a special connection to this race. When we got on the course, people were cheering, and there was great excitement and support for us. When we got to the finish line, someone gave me a blanket, just like all the other athletes, and that proved I belonged. Since then, they have participated in over 1,000 races together, inspiring the world with one parent's selfless act of love for his child. So this April, the city of Boston unveiled a statue at the starting line of the marathon, a monument to these two men, who haven't broken any records for distance or time, but who have set the standard for determination and perseverance. And the Hoyts, after 31 years of competition, decided to end their long-distance career right where it all began.
It was a beautiful day, and we had a great start. And then we got to about 22, 23 mile mark, and I just looked and I said, it seems like there's more police around than normal.
We're interrupting your program because there have been 2 explosions today at the Boston Marathon. There are a lot of people dying.
The finish line at Copley Square had been reduced to chaos and pain.
We just couldn't believe that somebody would do that, just go in and set up bombs to kill anybody, they didn't care who it was or anything else. It was just so sad.
On Monday morning, the sun rose over Boston. In an instant, the day's beauty was shattered. The celebration became a tragedy. But, in the words of Dick Hoyt, who's pushed his disabled son Rick in 31 Boston marathons, we can't let something like this stop us.
This was planned to be our last Boston Marathon, but because of the tragedy, we plan to honor those who were killed and injured by running one last time. This time, when they run the marathon, it will be more than a father pushing his son across the finish line. They will be a team, finishing a race on behalf of an entire city. A city that has given them as much as they have given to him. experience the same wonderful feelings I felt running out the very first race. If I had to sum up all I have learned by competing in long-distance events, it all boils down to remembering that, yes, you can. And never, never give up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the horse.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank all of you for giving such a warm welcome to a couple of stubborn Boston guys. We want to put you at our best foot forward, so I'm going to let my son, the college grad, talk first.
I am so excited to be here in LA to receive the Jimmy V. Perseverance Award. I can hardly believe we are here. 37 years ago, nobody would even talk to us, but because my dad said yes when I asked him to push me in the first race, and my family, especially my brothers Ron and Russ, have always stood by us and helped us persevere, even with so many people telling us that we did not belong. We are here. It only proves the wisdom of Jimmy V's words. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. And as you might imagine, we are even more thrilled because the life motto of Team Hoyt, which has inspired thousands of people around the world to better themselves through athletics and to not tolerate people with disabilities being denied the opportunity to participate in life is yes, you can.
Rick is my inspiration. He has taught me great many things over the years, and every day I consider myself lucky to be his father and teammate. I don't think you could find two guys more proud to represent the city of Boston. Next time you see someone in a wheelchair or who can't talk or walk, or they may talk or walk a little bit different, they are people too and deserve to be able to live, learn, work, and play. Rick and I want to thank you all.
In 1989, Judy, Dick, and Rick created the Hoyt Foundation. We are supported by generous donors. We have charity teams that run the Boston Marathon, the Falmouth Road Race, and the New York City Marathon. These runners help raise funds that allow us to continue the work that Dick, Judy, and Rick started. We are adding charity teams in Chicago next year and even in Sydney, Australia next year as well. With this support, we are able to ensure that people with disabilities are included the way that Rick was all over the world. We have donated specially designed chairs so that people can run like Rick. We have helped individuals with disabilities learn to swim, become competitive horseback riders, become competitive surfers, and many more activities. One of the things that we are really proud of as well is to be able to actually make sure that spaces everywhere in the world are appropriate and accessible to people with disabilities. And we've actually started to do some of that work in a very local way. I'd like to have Bob come back up. And I'd just like to let you know that the Hoyt Foundation is planning to continue the work of saying yes you can. And it's going to start right here and right now, Bob. When someone asks, can I visit this museum? We will ensure that the answer is yes you can. And we're going to do that by presenting a check for $10,000 to the museum to get that extra. Thank you all. I appreciate everybody coming out to hear me talk tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk to folks for a little while as we bring the evening to a close.
Please stay and talk with Russ or the family, and if you have any questions. I don't know how this room was because I was standing in the doorway, but there wasn't a dry eye in the hallway, so I would assume it's the same thing here. But again, Russ, Team Hoyt, thank you so much to all of you to come out tonight to support us and support Team Hoyt. Thank you. Have a great evening. One question.
Yeah, I wonder if we could ask some questions from the audience so
Sure.
that we could
Absolutely.
hear what other people are asking and what the answers might be.
Sure. Nope.
Well, let me go with Team Hoyt first.
Did you have a question that you'd like to start us with? Or?
No.
No.
My eyes are still watering.
Tell us about the water part of the Ironman.
Sure. Yeah. So the question was, tell us about the water part of the Ironman. So I'm going to start with what I think is the most fascinating part of the story. When Rick asked my father, "Can we do a triathlon?" my father couldn't swim. We ended up moving to a little town called Holland, Massachusetts. There was a lake, and my dad literally would walk into the water until the water got up to here, and then he actually figured out and taught himself how to swim. And the even funnier part of that story is my mother was a swim instructor. And my brother Robin and I could both, as soon as we could walk, we could swim. I mean, at 18 months, I could swim. So it's actually kind of funny. And at one point, Rick could actually swim further in a pool than my father could. The very first time Dad and Rick ever tried to do the swim portion of a triathlon, they did it without a boat. My father tried to put Rick on his chest and backpedal it didn't work. Quickly realized that they needed to have a boat. So what they did is they had a boat, basically an inflatable Boston whaler, if you're familiar, and the boat would have a rope attached to it, and my father would actually wear a vest, and the vest would zip up, and the rope would attach to the back of the vest. So my father was actually towing Rick during the swim portion of the race.
So 10 times harder.
10 times harder, and a couple of times in races, it even happened that if you've ever tried to do an open water swim, it can be challenging, and sometimes other swimmers would get in distress. They would see the boat. They would actually grab onto the sides of the boat. We watched one race. Dad actually finished towing not only Rick, but 7 other swimmers who were holding on to the side of the boat. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer for folks?
What was his military career?
What was his military career? So my dad started out in the Army National Guard, and after a few years, he actually transferred over to the Air National Guard, and he was in the Air Guard until the age of 55. He had a 35-year career. The last 15 of it, surprise, surprise, he was the fitness officer at the base.
I do have a question now. Can you be a little more specific about the role that your mom played in all of
Absolutely. So the question was, in case you didn't hear it, could you be more specific about your mom's role? My mom may be the greatest advocate that I've ever met or heard of in my life. When Rick was young, he was not allowed to go to public school. They told him he had to be shipped off to a school that specialized in working with children with special needs. And whether their intellectual capacity was affected or not, they were all put into a same building, same program, and taught separately. And this was in no way appropriate for Rick or for many other individuals with disabilities. So she actually, not only did she get Westfield to put Rick into a public school, she actually went to the state and got the first law ever written to allow inclusion to happen in public schools. It was called Chapter 766 right here in Massachusetts. And that law actually became the standard for the federal law, which is still in existence today, called the IDEA. It's the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So her effort actually changed the way that our entire country educates individuals with disabilities, and it allowed for kids with disabilities like Rick to be able to go to the same school as their brothers and sisters, the same school as their neighbors. So it actually allowed people to have friends and relationships that they otherwise would not have had. She also created the first ever summer camp where individuals with disabilities and without disabilities could go together. The family joke was it was just one way to get all three of her little brats out of the house at the same time. But the truth is it was actually a camp that, again, it changed the way that people thought about how individuals with disabilities should be treated. They should have the same opportunities as everybody else. Thank you. Yes?
How do you find the accessibility projects that you're interested in supporting, and how do you decide on, there've got to be a lot of needs, how do you decide how you're going to engage?
Sure. The question is, how do we decide on the accessibility projects that we work with? It's really case-by-case basis, and a lot of times it's because of connections directly back to the family or the foundation. We happen to be here today because of my aunt, Susan Grillo, my mother's sister. So Susan, why don't you stand up and turn around and give a wave. Susan is, if I'm correct, is a board member here at the museum.
No, not a board member, but volunteer.
She's a volunteer here at the museum, but she is a member of the board of directors for the Hoyt Foundation. So that connection happened, and we were able to take a look at this project. We also, in addition to having the foundation, we have 13 chapters across the United States. So we have chapters in Texas, San Diego, Denver, Virginia Beach. We actually have one international one in Canada. And all of those chapters have become connected to the foundation because there are groups of people that had personal relationships with Dad and Rick. They had done events in those areas. People got interested in being able to create opportunities for other people to do races together. So it's really through specific connections to projects. That way we know that these are projects that will be followed through with. What we're able to do here for this museum is actually, it's a little bit of seed money that's able to connect to other funding that you have to have something to get started to become eligible for the other funding. So we really love the fact that this is actually going to snowball into a bigger project to make this museum a truly accessible venue. Any other questions? Well, thank you again.